Welcome to HD Rare Coins, your ultimate source for rare coins, fascinating history, and the thrill of discovery. From legendary pennies to hidden gems, we explore the world of numismatics one amazing coin at a time. The year 1991 sat quietly in the pages of American coinage history, a year without commemoratives to dominate the spotlight, a year where the mint simply kept producing the coins that people would pass from hand to hand, never pausing to wonder if something extraordinary might have slipped through unnoticed. The Denver Mint, tasked with striking tens of millions of Jefferson nickels, followed its routines as it always did. Machinery roared, presses fell with rhythm, and shiny 5-cent pieces rolled into bags destined for banks across the nation. These coins, made of 75% copper and 25% nickel, bore the now familiar profile of Thomas Jefferson on one side, and his beloved Monticello on the other, designs that had long since become part of America's circulating fabric. Yet in that seemingly ordinary year, a small imperfection was born, not from carelessness, but from the inevitable wear and strain that plagues minting equipment. A flaw, barely visible to the naked eye at first glance, would alter the fate of some of these coins and eventually transform one particular piece into an object of desire, the kind of discovery collectors spend lifetimes chasing. It began, as many such stories do, in obscurity. The coin was nothing more than change in a pocket, perhaps slipped across a counter during a purchase so mundane it left no memory. Day after day, it circulated like countless others, the Denver Mint mark quietly resting beside Jefferson's profile, the date, 1991, holding no particular weight. It endured scratches, bumps, the passage through vending machines, the shuffling of cash drawers. And yet, on this one coin, a small but crucial error rested in plain sight, waiting for the eye that could recognize it. For years it passed unnoticed, dismissed as ordinary, until eventually it came into the possession of a man whose passion for numismatics drove him to examine every detail of the coins he handled. That he was not a dealer of great wealth or renown, merely a collector who believed that history spoke through the smallest details of metal. One evening, under the soft glow of a desk lamp, he emptied the contents of his pocket and spread the coins out before him. His eyes had been trained over time to search for subtleties, the sharpness of a strike, the shape of a mint mark, the clarity of a design. It was a habit that required patience, but also a deep curiosity. When his gaze fell upon the 1991 nickel, there was no sudden revelation. Instead, there was hesitation. Something felt off, though he could not immediately place it. He turned the coin over between his fingers, Monticello glinting faintly in the light, Jefferson's face carrying the familiar solemn dignity. And then he noticed it, a distortion, slight but undeniable, in the alignment of the design. The mint mark looked different, almost as if it had been placed with an uncertain hand. The letters seemed slightly shifted, the date itself carrying a faint doubling that hinted at a misstep in the striking process. His heart quickened, though reason urged caution. Error coins were not uncommon, but finding one required both luck and knowledge. Could this be a doubled die? A repunched mint mark? He set aside his other coins and pulled a magnifying glass closer. The details sharpened, and the evidence became undeniable. There was doubling on the numbers of the date, and the mint mark appeared thicker, almost as though it had been struck twice. It was not damage, it was part of the coin's very creation. In that moment, the ordinary nickel transformed into something altogether different. He sat back in his chair, a thrill racing through him. This was no longer pocket change. This was history revealing itself through imperfection, but the discovery was only the beginning. What did it mean? How rare was it? He pored over references, guidebooks, and articles, searching for mention of a 1991 nickel with such anomalies. Mentions were scarce, whispers of varieties that few had confirmed. The Denver Mint had a long history of repunched mint marks and doubled dies, but not every example was catalogued, not every error was known to the wider world. That uncertainty deepened the suspense. He had something special, but how special remained hidden just out of reach. The coin stayed with him, protected carefully, yet always calling his attention back. Weeks turned to months, and the collector followed the movements of error coins at auction. He noted how simple doubling, when rare enough, could elevate a coin's value far beyond its face. He watched as other nickels from neighboring years, 1989 with its repunched mint mark, 1990 with strike anomalies, commanded prices that startled newcomers to the hobby. Each sale added fuel to his curiosity, each catalog listing whispered that his find might someday stand among them. Yet he resisted the temptation to rush into a sale. Coins, he knew, were like secrets: reveal them too quickly, and the impact is diminished. Wait long enough, and the right eyes will see their worth. Time, as it does, worked in his favor. The numismatic community grew more attentive to modern varieties, once dismissed as insignificant. Collectors who once scoffed at double dies from the late 20th century began to appreciate their scarcity. Auctions that once focused exclusively on early coppers and silver dollars began to feature modern nickels with quiet reverence. The value of such errors began to climb, slowly at first, then with increasing momentum. The 1991 D nickel sat at the center of this shifting tide, its quiet imperfection becoming more significant with each passing year, and then came the moment when speculation turned to revelation. A well-known error specialist examined the coin and confirmed what the collector had long believed: the doubling was genuine, the mintmark bore signs of repunching, and together they created a variety so scarce it could be counted among the rarest of the Jefferson series. Word spread quickly, as it always does in such circles. What had once been a whisper became a conversation, and what had once been a curiosity became a prize. The collector watched as eyes widened at shows, as dealers leaned in for a closer look, as offers began to rise. The value of the coin evolved in stages, almost like a story unfolding. At first, it was worth perhaps a few dollars to the uninitiated, the kind of error a casual collector might set aside without much thought. Then, as awareness grew, its price crept into the hundreds. Some dismissed this as a fad, a momentary surge of interest that would fade. But the coin held its ground. More examples were not flooding the market, no hoard appeared to diminish its rarity. Instead, it remained elusive, each verified piece adding weight to its reputation. Auctions recorded hammer prices that climbed steadily upward, and soon the 1991 D-era nickel stood not merely as an oddity, but as a marker of the growing appreciation for late 20th century minting mishaps. Yet the most remarkable twist lay not just in its value, but in its meaning. For while most error coins simply reveal the flaws of machinery, this particular piece revealed something more subtle: the transitional moment in the U.S. mint's practices. By the early 1990s, the process of hand-punching mintmarks was nearing its end, soon to be replaced by digital and mechanical precision that would all but eliminate such repunched varieties. The 1991 D nickel, then, was not just an error, it was a relic of the last years when human imperfection could leave its trace upon the die. It stood at the threshold between eras, carrying within it the fingerprints of a vanishing practice. That realization elevated its significance beyond price alone. It was not merely rare, it was historical. Collectors began to whisper about it in reverent tones, describing it as a bridge between the old and the new. Some sought it not only for its rarity, but for its symbolism. The flawed doubling, the imperfect mintmark, spoke of the mint's evolution, of the human hand giving way to the machine. And in that symbolism lay the unexpected twist: a coin that began as a mistake now represented progress itself, a frozen moment in the story of American coinage. The collector who first recognized its worth watched this transformation with a mixture of pride and disbelief. The nickel he had once turned between his fingers beneath a desk lamp had become something much larger than himself. Dealers placed it in high-grade holders, specialists wrote about it in journals, and auction houses courted it with eager hands. Offers rose into the thousands, yet for him, its value could not be measured in dollars alone. It had given him something far rarer: the experience of discovery, the thrill of unveiling a hidden truth from the most ordinary of places. And so, the 1991 D. Jefferson nickel endures, not merely as currency, not merely as a collector's item, but as a story etched into metal. Its journey from pocket change to prized rarity tells of chance, patience, and the way history can hide in plain sight. The doubling of its numbers, the uncertain hand of its mintmark, the timing of its creation, all of these converge to create an artifact whose worth continues to climb, whose story continues to capture those who search for meaning in the smallest of details. The dawn of a new millennium was filled with anticipation. In the year 2000, America stood at the threshold of change, celebrating not just the arrival of a new century but also the continuity of traditions, however small they seemed. At the United States Mint, production carried on as usual. Coins struck that year bore familiar designs, ones that had circulated in countless hands for decades. Among them was the Jefferson nickel, a coin that by then had become so ordinary, so ingrained in daily life, that few gave it a second glance. Yet hidden within the millions produced at the Philadelphia Mint in 2000 was something different: something that would one day cause even the most seasoned collectors to pause, study, and question. The Jefferson nickel had long been a staple of U.S. coinage. Introduced in 1938, its design featured the noble profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, his face turned resolutely to the left, his name inscribed above, Liberty, and the date pressed firmly into the field. On the reverse stood Monticello, Jefferson's famed estate, a building that had watched over the reverse of every nickel for more than 60 years. By 2000, the design was nearing the end of its long run, soon to be replaced in a commemorative redesign. But before that change arrived, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 1.5 billion nickels for circulation. Among that staggering number, something unusual crept into existence, a mistake, almost invisible at first glance, but destined to make this unassuming coin a story of mystery and value. It is tempting to believe that modern minting, with its machinery and precision, would leave no room for error. Yet perfection in such massive production is an illusion. Dies wear down, planchets slip, pressures misalign. And in 2000, at least one set of dies created coins with flaws that only the most attentive eyes could catch. Weak strikes, doubled features, die cracks, and other oddities slipped quietly into circulation, indistinguishable to anyone paying for coffee or dropping change into a jar. Only years later would these errors rise from obscurity, brought to light by collectors who refused to let even the smallest detail escape their notice. One such collector spent his weekends combing through bank rolls. It was not glamour that drew him to the search, but the thrill of possibility. He had handled thousands of nickels, most of them mundane, tarnished by years of circulation. But on one afternoon, he opened a roll and saw something strange. At first, the nickel looked like any other, Jefferson's profile staring back, Monticello standing firm on the reverse. But under careful light, the inscriptions blurred. The word Liberty appeared doubled, faint echoes of letters trailing beside their intended forms. The date too seemed to shimmer with repetition, as if the die had trembled in the moment of striking. His heart quickened. He compared it with other nickels from the roll, each perfectly ordinary. This one was different. He turned it over, and Monticello revealed more peculiarities. The steps at the base of the building, normally crisp when well struck, appeared indistinct, the lines doubled or fading into weakness. Along the rim, faint die cracks spread like lightning, small but undeniable. He knew immediately that this was not damage from circulation, this was born at the mint, a minting error that had survived unnoticed among the billions. The discovery was electrifying. It wasn't merely about finding something valuable. It was about uncovering a piece of history, an accident frozen in metal that no one else had recognized until now. He felt the weight of it in his hand, the ordinary nickel transformed into something extraordinary. His mind raced with questions. How many of these could exist? Were there others hidden in pockets, drawers, and banks across the country? Or was this one of only a handful? At first, the world outside his small circle of collectors seemed indifferent. A nickel was still a nickel to most people. But when he shared images of the coin online, the response was immediate. Collectors debated its authenticity, scrutinizing the photos, comparing them to known varieties. Some dismissed it as nothing unusual, just wear from years of use. Others leaned closer, noting the telltale signs of a genuine double die, the small but decisive markers that no circulation wear could produce. Slowly, the truth began to take shape. The 2000p nickel was not always ordinary. Some bore an error that made them remarkable. As word spread, the value began its unpredictable journey. At first, sales were modest, $5 here, $10 there, small multiples of face value that hinted at interest but did not yet reveal the full potential. But as examples surfaced, carefully authenticated and verified, the prices climbed. A coin once worth 5 cents now fetched 20, 50, even more, depending on its condition. High-grade examples, pulled from circulation before time could wear them down, drew particular fascination. Collectors recognized that the absence of official mint sets for certain years made pristine pieces difficult to find, and so the competition grew fierce. The original collector watched the progression with awe. He had not stumbled upon riches, not yet, but he knew he had found something that could evolve beyond expectation. Each new auction listing, each mention in collector forums, added momentum. The suspense built with every sale, the numbers creeping higher, the question lingering, just how valuable could this coin become? The physical characteristics themselves told a story. On some nickels, the doubling was subtle, requiring magnification to appreciate. On others, it was bold enough to catch the naked eye, letters and numbers shadowed by their unintended twins. The die cracks varied as well, some faint hairline fractures, others more pronounced, slicing across fields and devices like scars. Even the weak strikes added intrigue, the incomplete details hinting at a moment when the press faltered. Each error bore its own fingerprint, making every example unique, each one a piece of a puzzle collectors yearned to solve. Then came the unexpected twist. As more collectors studied their finds, they realized the error was not limited to one variety. There were multiple. Some displayed doubling only on the obverse, while others showed distortion on the reverse. A few revealed clashes, where dies had struck each other without a planchet between them, leaving ghostly impressions on the fields. What began as a single discovery expanded into a family of anomalies, all tied to the year 2000, all marked with the Philadelphia Mint's P. It was not one mistake, it was a season of mistakes, each variation feeding the hunger of collectors who now knew to look more closely at their change. This revelation transformed the narrative. The 2000 P nickel was no longer simply a coin with one error. It was a year of errors, a hidden trove of varieties waiting to be catalogued. The hunt intensified. Collectors across the country searched through rolls, magnifiers in hand, hoping to find their own piece of the anomaly. Stories emerged of chance discoveries at grocery store counters, in coffee shop tip jars, in forgotten rolls stored away in basements. Each new find reignited the market, prices climbing in waves as excitement surged. For the collector who had first spotted the doubled Liberty, the journey was surreal. What had begun as a quiet afternoon pastime had grown into a phenomenon. His coin, the first he had studied with trembling hands, became the centerpiece of his collection, not for the money it might fetch but for the thrill of having uncovered the first clue to a much larger mystery. He often thought about how easily he might have overlooked it, how easily it could have slipped back into circulation and been lost forever. As time passed, the value of the 2000 P era nickels continued to evolve. Some examples in mint state condition sold for hundreds, their prices driven higher by rarity and demand. Others, more worn, still commanded premiums far above their humble denomination. The market fluctuated, prices rising and falling with bursts of enthusiasm, yet the overall trajectory was undeniable. What had once been dismissed as ordinary had become extraordinary, a nickel transformed into a coveted collector's prize, and the mystery has not fully closed. To this day, collectors debate the full extent of the varieties, new examples still surfacing from unlikely places. The story remains unfinished, the hunt ongoing. Each coin tells its own version of the error, its own twist in the tale. For some, it is the doubling on the date, for others, the faint cracks on Monticello. For all, it is a reminder that even in a time of precision, imperfection can slip through, leaving behind treasures that redefine the ordinary. The year 2000 was meant to symbolize new beginnings, but in the quiet hum of the Philadelphia Mint, it also produced reminders of chance, of flaw, of mystery. Among billions of nickels, a few bore the marks of imperfection, carrying with them the power to captivate those who would one day notice. What began as a mistake became a story, what began as a nickel became a prize, and what began as an unnoticed anomaly became a legend whispered among collectors, proof that history sometimes hides in the smallest details, waiting to be discovered in the palm of your hand.